So, folks, I do also want to talk about another Matt Walsh video. And I know, we just talked about Matt Walsh covering why Hollywood is failing, and it was very unsatisfying. But I swear he's got a good point about Hollywood this time. No, he doesn't. It's also a bad point. But we'll continue. We'll keep going through. I'll break it down for you guys. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Do the things, especially a comment. It really helps. And let's dive into it, shall we? Here we go. He has a bone to pick with Hollywood, as he usually does. Which bone shall he pick today?
It's been hard to miss the ongoing effort to rewrite America's history, to cast the United States as a kind of international supervillain. Just a couple weeks ago, we spent the better part of an hour dissecting the 25,000-hour documentary from Ken Burns about the Revolutionary War, which told a flagrant lie, either explicitly or by implication, every 10 minutes or so throughout the course of the very long documentary. And the point of the documentary, of course, was to convince young people, many of whom will be forced to watch the film in public school, that America is a terrible country founded by racist misogynists who stole all their ideas from the Indians.
I mean, they got a lot of their ideas from Native Americans, yeah. Like the Iroquois Confederacy was a big inspiration.
Turns out, according to Ken Burns, the Indians were philosophers on the level of Plato or Aristotle.
Yes. There were people who dedicated their entire lives to thinking about philosophy, man. Come on, what do you like he genuinely is so racist that he thinks Native Americans like were basically animals. Like that's what he's saying here. He's like, "Oh no, it's patently impossible for a Native American to be a philosopher." Like that is some incredible racism, just like some terrible shit. How do you get through life thinking like this?
You see, when they weren't busy converting human beings into stew or arranging beads into flamboyant patterns because they were too primitive.
Hey, I forget what's one of the most famous stories of cannibalism in regards to westward expansion. I'll give you guys a hint. It wasn't being done by Native Americans. Donner Party, anybody?
To come up with a written language, the Indians were basically giving Ben Franklin all of his ideas under the table. Now, correcting the historical record with our own projects on the scale of Ken Burns' work.
Well, no, Ben Franklin took other people's ideas. He was not the kind of person who needed like anyone to pass ideas under the table because he was the one grabbing those ideas.
Could not be any more urgent, which is why very soon I intend to do that. But in order to understand the extent of the propaganda we're up against, it's important to recognize that leftists are not simply rewriting history. They're also attempting to rewrite some of the most classic expressions of American culture, including films and books that are widely read by children. In particular, there's been a very well-coordinated, well-funded effort to propagandize children into believing that evil does not exist, and that any individual who seems to be evil is, in fact, a very misunderstood victim of circumstance. And to illustrate...
Well, yeah, people are the product of their environments, man. Like, yeah. In a lot of ways, a villain can be construed as, like, a really pitiable object because of the potential for good that was dashed by the chance and circumstance of their lives, you know? And perhaps some people can be just genuinely evil regardless of circumstance, but I think that might be few and far between.
What I'm talking about. I want you to listen to this musical number from the 1961 Disney film 101 Dalmatians, and it's sung by Roger, the character, about the villain of the story, who of course is Cruella de Vil.
We're not, you can't trick me. You can't trick me into listening to a song.
Sung much to the delight of a family's pet Dalmatian, Pongo. And see what you notice about the lyrics. It's not very subtle. Listen.
Yeah, you guys all understand which song it is now, right? Yeah, Cruella de Vil is not a good lady. She wants to skin puppies. The animation in that movie is so great. I look they rotoscoped a lot of it apparently. I think you can still find like some of the you can still find some of the baseline film that they animated from. Really interesting. Matt Walsh just straight up playing a huge clip from 101 Dalmatians. This is wild.
If you're watching the video podcast, the first thing that probably jumped out at you is the quality of the animation. This was clearly put together, drawn by artists who cared about what they were creating. And that's why it holds up more than 60 years later. And it's very clearly superior to the CGI slop and now the AI slop that we've all grown accustomed to. And it certainly looks a lot better than the modern remake of this same story, which we'll get to in a second. But the more important part for now, the point that I want to make is about the lyrics. And he says, quote, "If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will. To see her is to take a sudden chill." Then he compares Cruella de Vil to vermin, says she's an inhuman beast who, quote, "ought to be locked up and never released." Now, nothing in the film ever contradicts these statements. They're obviously true. Cruella de Vil is a genuinely
They are obviously objectively true.
horrible person in the story. Her goal is to steal puppies and murder them. It's hard to get, doesn't get much worse than that. I mean, it can get worse, but not much worse. And in her first appearance in Roger's home, she puts out a cigarette in his wife's muffins, which, to be clear, is not a euphemism. It's like actual muffins. She flicks her cigarette over the coffee. She openly mocks Roger and his home. Watch.
No, don't stop doing this to me. Like, yeah, like you don't have to try and make this gigantic. Like, look at all these clips. You don't have to do that. You can just say what she wanted to do, which is to steal a bunch of puppies that weren't hers, skin them, and make a coat, because that was her entire thing, was just having exotic fur coats. Like, you can't just say what the premise of the film is and the premise of this character. You don't need to show us the clips where she's just like delighting in evil, because like we can kind of surmise that from her stated goal in the film. Also, yeah, in real life, Cruella de Vil would be like Matt Walsh's best friend. Matt Walsh would be putting together shows being like, look, there's nothing wrong with skinning an animal and using it for clothing. Humans have been doing that for 100,000 years. Like, that would be his argument. But, you know, a villain in a Disney movie that's convenient for him to use as a bludgeon, let's go.
Point in this scene or in the entire film does Cruella de Vil display a hint of humanity. So for any child watching this, the lesson is unmistakable. Disney is telling its young audience that evil exists and that some people are so evil that they belong in prison for the rest of their lives. You should not interact with them. You should avoid them. And if you do come in contact with them, they'll try to take advantage of you. They'll hurt you. They'll destroy everything you care about. They'll defile your baked goods. They'll walk around your house like, Hillary Clinton from that meme that we've all seen. You know, it's the one where she's in that house in East Harlem, visibly shocked that it's not up to her standards. They will make their contempt for you as clear as they possibly can. These evil people have no redeeming qualities. They're...
You know, I do just want to say two things here. Number one, Matt Walsh, if you reframe this as, for example, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, a man who loves to kill things and, like, skin them, one, he would absolutely go to bat for Gaston and not see any problem with what Gaston does or his goals of, like, killing animals and, like, displaying them and, like, turning them into clothing, etc. But also, like, Gaston is rude. Cruella is also rude, and Matt Walsh seems to just conflate rudeness with evil, like, all the time in his, like, film analysis. It's fascinating. Like, if someone is rude, they're evil to him, which is pretty, it's pretty interesting coming from the guy who's, like, known for being a rude radio shock jock.
They're just a negative for you and for society at large. Now, Disney didn't dilute this message in any way, because in 1961, Nobody was worried about being called a racist for teaching basic fundamental life lessons to children.
I'm sorry, what? Are you seriously trying to argue that during the civil rights era, no one was called a racist for what they taught in classrooms? I I'm genuinely speechless. I can't believe it. Where is Song of the South? God.
And religion was much more important to most Americans than it is today. A Christian nation is capable of recognizing that.
Yeah, also, if you knew anything about religion, Matt, or were being honest about anything to do with religion, in 1961, religion was not a unifying factor in the United States. It was a really big deal that JFK was Catholic. Like Catholics and Protestants, the Presbyterians and Methodists, like there were straight up town rivalries and like battles fought on the basis of religious affiliation for different areas. Like, come on. No, we were all one nation under God. It said so on our money.
Some people will receive eternal damnation because they're evil. They don't deserve any of our sympathy. But the modern.
And some people don't believe in that. Some people don't believe in your religion. And they also deserve rights here in the good old US of A.
Remake of this film called Cruella delivered a very different message. It was released back in 2021.
What is this guy thinking he's trying to say? Well, not to jump the gun too much, but I believe his argument is going to be that with remakes about villains and showing like the origin stories of villains, that is an effort to make them not villains and therefore destroy the very concept of people being capable of evil in above their own right. I think he thinks that Hollywood is trying to destroy the ability to call someone evil, which it frankly is just insane on his part.
It completely rewrites the character of Cruella de Vil to make her the hero. And it begins with this origin story, which Cruella's mother is killed by Dalmatians right in front of her while she looks on in horror. This is
what we call bad writing.
One of the worst scenes I've ever had to look at in terms of just like the quality. And now I'm going to make you endure it as well. This is completely real. This is like the actual movie. Watch.
Stop playing scenes from Disney movies. This isn't at all related to your point. Oh my god. Dalmatian attack. They tackled her into the over the cliff.
Even get into how dumb this scene is. I mean, just look at it.
Yeah, again, it's bad writing, Matt. Sometimes that happens.
The quality isn't in the same universe as the animated film that was released 6 decades earlier. The sky in the background is clearly fake. The weather is clearly fake. The Dalmatians are...
Unlike the animation in the 1961 version, which was indistinguishable from your waking reality, Matt?
Clearly fake. Everything is fake. Even the things they didn't need to fake, right? Like the basic physical surroundings. You don't need to fake that. But they faked it. Unlike with the animated film, they're not...
Yeah, honestly, he's just padding his runtime. It's crazy. He's so lazy.
Not fake in a way that's visually appealing or interesting or artistic. That's one thing. But these look like graphics that you might see in a mall arcade.
IDK.
In 2000.
As an animation nerd, Disney's stuff has always been pretty notoriously sanitized and conceptually bland, even before the remakes. It's always telling how much conservatives champion their work.
Yeah, and like I do think that there are some like interesting triumphs or innovations that Disney has brought on to animation, but like yeah, what this guy puts forward on a daily basis is just really just old man yells at cloud. Old man yells at cloud, old man yells at cloud.
2, or a game on the original PlayStation.
Also, Bino the Amoeba, thank you for the $5 dono. Very much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the show.
There's no sense that any artist cared about how it looked or spent any amount of time on it really at all. And appropriately enough, along with the aesthetic decay, the messaging of the film has fallen apart as well. In Cruella, we're told that Cruella isn't actually a bad person. Instead, she's suffered a horrible personal tragedy as a child.
Yeah, because it's an origin story. She still grows up to be a bad person, Matt. She still grows up to be the kind of person who would skin 101 puppies for their pelts.
Her mother died right in front of her because CGI dogs ran after her, as you just saw. And we later learned that those dogs were secretly ordered to attack via dog whistle by another character called the Baroness. So Cruella spends the rest of the movie getting vengeance on this person who killed her mother. But the big twist, spoiler alert, is that the Baroness is Cruella's actual mother. And the woman who was pushed off the cliff by the Dalmatians was a maid who was told to raise Cruella from a young age. That's what I learned on Wikipedia.
That's not okay. That's also bad writing.
Anyway, so to recap, in the original film, Cruella is evil and belongs in prison. Pretty simple. But in the remake, Cruella's mother killed Cruella's stepmother using Dalmatians who could be ordered to commit murder via dog whistle, and Cruella was horribly scarred by this. So Cruella
sometimes life comes at you fast.
Plots revenge against her own mother, has the police arrest her, and then gives some Dalmatians away as a gift to her friends, since now she's conquered her, Dalmatian phobia. In other words, moral clarity, not to mention narrative clarity, is completely...
Again, this is a bad concept. You shouldn't have done it. But if you did, it took a character that was simple, made them complex in stupid ways. That doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world, though.
The absent from the remake. The message for children in the remake is what exactly? Is the message that your mother may not actually be your mother? Maybe she's a secret murderer, or maybe the message is that evil characters who are literally named cruel devil are actually misunderstood? Like the people who every indication is that they're evil. Everything you see, right down to the name, is that they're evil.
Yeah.
It might still just be misunderstood.
Just like how Matt Walsh might just still be misunderstood.
Maybe they've simply internalized a lot of emotional trauma from freak accidents that occur.
Wasn't the remake for an older audience? I mean, the remake was for a completely different audience, right? Like anyone who saw 101 Dalmatians in the theaters as a child would have been like in their, 60... They would have had to be 67 or so. Like, I guess Cruella came out a few years ago. You guys do the math. All I'm saying is you'd have to be pretty old for this to have been the intended demographic to invoke the nostalgia, right? Like, they remade it to try and make 101 Dalmatians a relevant property again. Like what they do with a lot of their properties. They're like, oh, well, what do people know? What do people know about our movies? What do people know about our franchises? Okay, 101 Dalmatians. We can't... That's 101 Dalmatians is a lot of things to animate. Okay, what if we did none of the Dalmatians? Okay, well, what characters do we have left in that movie? Well, I guess we got... Well, the only one people know by name is Cruella de Vil. So I guess we're making a movie about Cruella de Vil. It's... I just gotta say, like, that's how the thought process works for, like, executives who want to return on their investment. They want to make their money back. Like, he's complaining about all of this. It's not a grand plan to destroy evil. It's just maximizing profit while minimizing risk. It's capitalism.
In their past. Now, when this film came out, it was tempting to dismiss it as a terrible film, which it is, and move on with your life. And that's what most people did, and justifiably so. But it's actually part of a much larger trend. And it's a trend that does matter because culture matters and this stuff matters. And for the past decade or so, Hollywood has continued to follow this exact template. They've taken an obviously, unequivocally evil classic character, and then they come out with a
name recognition, baby. A more powerful force than good or evil, at least as far as Hollywood accountants go. Name recognition.
New film or show, which makes the case that actually that character was the good guy all along. I mean, this stuff is all over the place, especially with kids' shows and movies. All over the place. The most recent example of this tactic is the upcoming animated film Steps, which is due out next year from Netflix, apparently. It was just announced. And here's how Netflix's official promotion...
Also, I'm just going to throw this out there. kids like feeling like they're edgy and like transgressive. And so when you can have a character design for a children's film that has like a little skull incorporated on it, like kids feel like they're getting away with something they shouldn't be. It makes them more interested in a movie, in a thing. It's a marketing gimmick, man.
Blog describes the idea behind this film. This is a pitch that feels like it was produced by ChatGPT, almost certainly was. And then Netflix just hit the green light without making any revisions whatsoever. So here it is. Quote, think you know Cinderella's evil stepsisters? Think again. When misunderstood Lilith is blamed for hijacking the royal ball with a stolen magic wand, she accidentally turns her sister Margot into a frog and allows the kingdom to fall into the hands of a prince-obsessed mean girl. Now Lilith must team up with Cinderella and a surprisingly dreamy troll to save the kingdom, repair the fractured fairy tale, and prove that even so-called villains deserve a shot at happily ever after.
Wait, so I'm sorry. So your problem is just a retelling of Cinderella that has like a stepsister who's like more complicated than just an evil bitch all the time? You know, my knowledge of pop culture is compelling me. My knowledge of pop culture is compelling me, and I can't stop it. I'm sorry. In this film, it turns out that her evil stepsisters aren't all just assholes. It turns out some of them, like this one at the very least, are alright. And also deserve love, even though they aren't the main character of the story. So, Matt Walsh is just complaining about something. When did this come out? I'm sorry. Just real quick. This came out in 2002, so Matt Walsh is approximately 23 years late to complain about this particular problem. But, you know, that's not going to stop him. Boy howdy.
And prove that even so-called villains deserve a shot at happily ever after. The villains are actually good. They don't deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. They're not vermin. They're not bad people. They deserve a shot at happily ever after, no matter what they've done. And the new villain to take the place of the stepsisters is a prince-obsessed mean girl, because that's the other thing, of course, we see now in these shows, especially ones for girls, is that, you know, it used to be that the princess wanted to meet a prince. And now the princess either doesn't care about meeting a prince, or if anyone wants to meet a prince in the movie now, it's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Anyway, here's the Wikipedia page for the character Anastasia Tremaine, which apparently is the name of the evil stepsister from the Cinderella films. Here's what happens in Cinderella 2 from her perspective. All right? She seems to have not changed until she meets the town's baker, who catches her eye. However, Lady Tremaine disapproves of the baker's working-class status and tries to make her daughter forget about him. As a result, Anastasia rebels against her mother for the first time. When she and the baker first meet, she's embarrassed after being kicked by a horse and sent flying into the bakery. Well, I'm glad she survived, apparently. Cinderella sees Anastasia and realizes that Anastasia has fallen for the baker, so Cinderella decides to help bring Anastasia and the baker together. Cinderella encourages Anastasia. I don't know which way I'm supposed to say it, so I'm going to switch, and it's going to irritate the dickens out of all y'all. Anastasia to follow her heart and gives her stepsister a makeover, changing her looks for the better. As a result, the baker asks Anastasia to go with him to the upcoming ball hosted by Cinderella. The baker and Anastasia have a misunderstanding, as Anastasia thinks the baker is in love with another woman as she cries in the fountain. Wait, yeah, okay, Anastasia thinks the baker's in love with another woman. While the latter wanted to give her the heart-shaped roses to Anastasia. This is the first time hearing about roses. All right. But the roses were eaten by a goat, who only left a single flower on the ground. The Lady Tremaine is displeased, as well as her sister Drizella, who states her relationship with the baker is a disaster, and her mother attempts to drag her away. Anastasia blatantly disobeys her mother and remains with the baker, causing Lady Tremaine to leave in a huff, much to Drizella's surprise as she follows her mother. Her part in the movie ends with her, the baker, dancing at another ball hosted by Cinderella, dancing with the Prince with dancing with Prince Charming. Anastasia found what she wanted, true love, to which Anastasia displays great gratitude and affection towards her stepsister for helping her find true love. Cinderella, however, corrects her and states Anastasia always knew how to find it herself. Wow. Matt Walsh is really late to the idea that villains might be more complicated than they first appear.
And for her part, Cinderella is teamed up with a surprisingly dreamy troll. So they're really sticking it to the patriarchy, in other words. It's a bit like that Snow White remake that nobody watched, where Rachel Zegler describes Snow White as a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a prince and all that kind of stuff. This is the kind of assembly line script writing that for the past decade has defined pretty much every major Hollywood remake of a classic. And every time they do it, these filmmakers convince themselves that they're doing something brave.
I mean, you could have a sexy troll. Like I don't know. I feel like it's not that weird to have a sexy troll. I don't know. Isn't that kind of a new like a fun take? Isn't that what the Hulk is basically? I mean, I guess so, but like not. I guess so. I don't know. I don't think the Hulk is that sexy. I think I think that like the Hulk could be a whole lot sexier. Let me put it that way.
And transgressive. Here's a quote from the director of this new Netflix Cinderella movie, quote, "This story is at its core about two very different sisters, one who fits perfectly into this fairy tale kingdom and one who doesn't, realizing they're more alike than different. It's such a personal story for me because growing up as an awkward, artsy, Taiwanese kid in suburban New Jersey often felt like an outsider, like Happily Ever After wasn't meant for me. I wanted to create a film for everyone who has ever felt like they didn't belong and show how a single act of kindness can change everything."
Matt Walsh is about to come on screen and be like, kindness is stupid and dumb, and if you like it, you're bad. Like, he's about to say something almost exactly around those lines. I guarantee it.
Now, the most obvious response to this, of course, is that this particular Netflix director, a woman who, according to her website, specializes in classical piano, ballet, fine art, classical violin, graphic design, and more, is a pathological narcissist. She's convinced herself that she's a victim.
Yeah, having a lot of skills makes you a narcissist. wanting to make entertainment for children makes you pathological. Jesus, it's so much worse than I predicted.
Because she was awkward and artsy, whatever that means. Apparently, we're supposed.
No, she said she felt different because she was ostracized on the basis of her race and like cultural differences, and like that was hard. It's not difficult to parse what she means, man.
Also believe that rich Taiwanese kids in suburban New Jersey are an oppressed demographic.
Yes, they are, via different axes than just poverty, though.
And now, as a result of that oppression, she's going to force.
This is, whenever a conservative makes an argument like this, like, you were a wealthy Taiwanese kid, though, in the suburbs of New Jersey. How could you possibly be oppressed? It's like hearing somebody say, like, well, you couldn't have been tied down with this rope, so how could you have been tied down with a bunch of other ropes? And, like, it baffles me as someone who sees that, and, like, I'm like, well, because there are a lot of other ropes here. Like, obviously, because other ropes exist. Also, none of this is forced on anyone. If you don't like it, don't see the movie. Exactly. But, Matt Walsh has to have something to complain about.
Netflix subscribers to watch her personal story, even though she's not.
She's personally going to force people to watch her story on Netflix? She's going to break into your house and threaten you with a gun in order to make you watch this animated Cinderella film?
Working on a documentary or biography about her own life. She's making a Cinderella movie, allegedly. But really, this.
Yeah, because some people don't want to make documentaries about their own lives and instead want to make cool shit.
Director's job is not to create anything. Her job is to erase the Cinderella story that everybody's familiar with.
What are you talking about? Her making a new movie doesn't erase the old one. Just like Disney making a Cinderella movie didn't erase the fairy tale. Come on.
The one with the stepsisters are really bad people. I mean, at one point, lest we forget, the stepsisters destroyed Cinderella's dress and assaulted her to the delight of Lady Tremaine, the stepmother. Watch.
Stop it. Stop doing this. Also, yeah, they were shitty to her, but also shitty people can change and grow, and that's a really good thing. I don't know, that can happen in real life too. Man just wants to watch Disney films so bad. Yeah. This is all because the Daily Wire Snow White thing failed. I legitimately forgot that that happened.
As a kid in the 1950s, if you saw this, you'd recognize that the stepmother and the stepsisters are not good people, and the film doesn't suggest otherwise at any point. There are no excuses for their behavior. There's no.
Yeah, no, obviously they are not good people as of the events of that film. Sometimes people get over their worst moments and become better people. They assume accountability, they mend their relationships, and they fix the issues that made them shitty. Sometimes that happens. And this is also why self-improvement is such an important concept for people to embrace. The idea that one should become constantly a better version of who they were before. Like physically, mentally, emotionally, etc. Like you should seek to better yourself. I think that that is an honorable goal. But in Matt Walsh's world, it is impossible to better oneself. And it's really sad and small-minded, really.
Sob story about how Dalmatians murdered her mother or something. They're just bad people. And in the end, they lose. And that's a moment to celebrate because it's good when bad.
Like in Matt Walsh's world, it's impossible for a character to have been through a traumatic experience and then emerge as a bad person, right? Like the story of Cruella is tragic in part because she went through trauma, she grew, she went beyond it, and then apparently still somehow became the kind of person who would want to skin 101 Dalmatians.
People lose. When you make Cinderella a story about how the evil stepsisters really aren't so bad, and in fact how they're really the heroes of the story, then you aren't simply producing another generic DEI slop fest, although you're doing that. You're also trying to confuse children about good and evil, and you're trying to erase the Christian themes of the Cinderella story, which were...
Ah, yes, Christ is the pumpkin. I get it now.
Especially evident in the Grimm brothers version of the story in the 1800s.
I love how he immediately contradicts himself by first saying that this lady's new version of Cinderella is going to destroy the story of Cinderella, but then is like, yes, and the 1950 version of Cinderella is actually, it does a, let's look back at the Grimm brothers version, and clearly the Grimm brothers version still exists and hasn't been destroyed. So have I seen Cruella? No, live action Disney films hold no interest for me personally, but I also don't just go on my show, sit down and start shitting on society writ large because Cruella exists.
In that version, the stepsister suffered a biblical Old Testament style punishment in the end. Quote, in the end, during the wedding, as she walks down the aisle with her stepsisters as her bridesmaid, the doves fly down and strike the two stepsisters' eyes, one in the left and the other in the right. When the wedding comes to an end and they march out of the church, the doves fly again, striking the remaining eyes of the two evil sisters blind, a punishment they had to endure for the rest of their lives. This is the way that it worked in old fairy tales, by the way. The villains were very evil, and in the end, very terribly bad things happened to the very terribly evil people. Now, in the Disney version, the ending wasn't quite so graphic, at least from it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't think that anybody was blinded by a dove pecking their eyeballs out. So they dialed down the Old Testament references a little.
I just have to be like, Matt, if you really love Old Testament references, why are you wearing mixed fabrics? If you really love Old Testament justice, Matt, why are you wearing mixed fabrics right now? Matt, the punishment for wearing mixed fabrics was lashes. Like you would get whipped for wearing mixed fabrics, Matt. You're literally promoting a violation of religious law and scripture, Matt, right now. But no! It's totally, it's fine when Matt does it, okay? It's fine when Matt commits acts counter to the Bible, but not when anyone else who doesn't share his religious worldview does, you know?
A bit, but even so, the stepsisters did not win in the end. But now, less than a century later, Netflix has decided that the
No massive
stepsisters are
anarchy.
indeed the heroes. They deserve a shot at happily ever after, we're told. Now, imagine being a child raised in a culture where everything, including basic biology, fundamental tenets of morality and Christianity, everything is subjective. You know, that really is the point here. The idea is to convince the youth.
I don't think that is the point. I think the point is to make money making movies because we live under capitalism.
That evil is not a legitimate concept, so that they can indoctrinate them into supporting and committing acts of evil. If you convince people evil doesn't exist, then generally they start doing evil things.
It's also not about, like, I'm sorry, portraying people as complicated does not mean this is not the same thing as saying evil doesn't exist. That's not remotely the same thing. Like, obviously, on the face of it.
Now, works that have overt Christian and right-coded themes are particularly under attack. Take the Rings of Power series by Amazon. I haven't seen it, but
Lord of the Rings is not conservative coded, like, at all.
from what I can tell, the show has decided to portray the orcs as sympathetic figures, even though Tolkien did the exact opposite.
Well, no, Tolkien specifically wrote extensively about orcs. He was very morally conflicted about orcs, and ultimately decided that even an orc was not beyond redemption. The redemption of Iluvatar? Eru Iluvatar, there we go. Orcs are really unfortunate creatures. They're like they are humans and elves abducted by Morgoth and twisted via torture and magic twistings beyond mortal ken into like horrible monsters. They are the products of trauma and suffering. Like you should have sympathy for an orc. It is a creature born out of immense suffering. I wonder how much Just for Men Die Maddie uses each morning. Damn, Equinox. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Very much appreciated. Also, alert box was disabled. There we go.
For reason, like these were embodiments of evil. This is from a website called Bounding Into Comics, quote, in the opinion of the Lord of the Rings of Power showrunners, their season 2 decision to humanize the Dark Lord's orc armies is far from controversial because not only does the change provide better opportunities for storytelling, but it also falls directly in line with Tolkien's writings.
True.
The orcs in the Rings of Power are shown as brutal but oppressed foot soldiers, their lives concerned not just with war and pillaging, but also achieving a future where their families can exist as more than tools for Lord Sauron to use in service of his ambitions.
Yes, that is true, actually. Like, yeah, no, this was obviously always the case. Like, they do not serve Sauron because they just love Sauron. They serve Sauron because, like, he can kill them. Like, he can kill them and has set up, like, an oppressive hierarchy where their immediate superiors can also, like, kill them for disobeying an order. Like, their lives have literally no meaning. The supreme commander of their forces, like, stands unblinkingly and unconcernedly when a gigantic rock kills, like, several of them standing right next to him. Like, they do not value the lives of orcs, but the orcs themselves value their own lives. We actually see this in Tolkien's work. You can read, The Return of the King, and you see the scene, shortly after the encounter with Shelob, you see the scene take place where Samwise Gamgee alone goes and pursues his master into an orcish keep and hears them arguing amongst themselves. They have self-interest. They have the idea of trying to vie for more power, because in this society, more power means more protection, more agency, and that is in woefully short supply if you live under the fascist eye of Sauron, right? So, as someone who has never read Tolkien, that sounds like a cool scene. It's a super cool scene. I should rewatch LOTOR. You should. Right? So Matt here is just like not understanding Lord of the Rings, which is how all conservatives are about Lord of the Rings. Like, all conservatives are like, this is ours, but understand it takes a profound misreading of Tolkien's work to arrive at a conservative worldview. He is somebody who he did base a lot of his world building for Lord of the Rings on Christian theology, but it is not the main thrust or what the world is about. And honestly, if you are, if you remember when Pokemon came out and Christians were like, oh, it's witchcraft. I mean, like, it's all the same. All of the same accusations can be leveled against Lord of the Rings. All right, here we go. Back into this.
So they're claiming.
Yeah, Tolkien was anti-Nazi and anti-apartheid by the standards of his time. He was fairly progressive in certain cases.
Claiming that Tolkien would have humanized the orcs, but he just never got around to doing it. I don't know. He wrote like 10 million words about this story. When you take all the books and all the other works related to it into account, and he meant to do that, he just did. But fortunately, we have the Amazon showrunners to swoop in decades later to tell us what Tolkien meant to say in a very heavy-handed fashion. There's this line of dialogue in the Amazon show, for example, from an orc named Glug. Quote, "The preparations are nearly complete, Lord Father, but we are safe here. We have a home. Must we go to war again? You told me Sauron was dead. Let us leave him that way." So enough to make you shed a tear for the orc hordes. And then there's this scene where we get to see an orc family lamenting the prospect of...
Just real quick, I found a quote from one of Tolkien's letters, letter 153. All right? This is a direct quote from Tolkien, just in case anyone needs a quote. Eru/God gave special sub-creative powers to certain of his highest created beings. That is a guarantee that what they devised and made should be given the reality of creation, of course within limits, and of course subject to certain commands or prohibitions. But if they fell, as the Diabolus Morgoth did, and started making things for himself to be their lord, these would then be, even if Morgoth broke the supreme ban against making other rational creatures like elves or men. They would at least be real physical realities in the physical world, however evil they might prove, even mocking the children of God. They would be Morgoth's greatest sins, abuses of his highest privilege, and would be creatures begotten of sin and naturally bad. I nearly wrote irredeemably bad, but that would be going too far, because by accepting or tolerating their making, necessary to their actual existence, even orcs would become part of the world, which is God's and ultimately good. Like, this is, like, what he's saying here is that orcs, mostly bad, but also can become good. Was there an alternative to being made of matter? I mean, I guess the alternative is being made of whatever Eru Iluvatar is made out of. Not me putting Lord of the Rings on in the background. There you go. This quote is from one of the orcs. "It's my guess you won't find much in that little fellow," said Gorbag. "He might have had nothing to do with the real mischief. The big fellow with the sharp sword doesn't seem to have thought him worth much anyhow. Just left him lying. Regular elvish trick." Yes. They're subject to propaganda. Exactly. What are the elvish tricks? An elvish trick is to leave soldiers posing as corpses on the battlefield. What we know of elves is that they don't do that, which again goes to show the propagandizing toward orcs, which, if orcs were completely and wholly bad, why would they need to be propagandized to?
More war.
No, don't you do this to me. Elves, yes, things happen. Talking to an orc, an orc that isn't just immediately evil. Oh my god, that flies in the face of what we understand about orcs, generally speaking. That's almost like a way to hook an audience and make it seem like an interesting story to tell. Crazy. Why would a storyteller want that?
Basically, the anti-war hippies.
How does Matt Walsh avoid DMCA? Larger channels are treated differently. That
At this point, they might as well throw in a scene where an orc goes postal because his health insurance claim is denied. I mean, they're committed to taking you out of the world the author created and shoehorning all of the most...
Again, not at all accurate if you know anything about Tolkien. Tolkien really wrestled with this issue like all of his life. He went back and forth on it all the time.
Orcs are evil in Lord of the Rings Feanor. Am I fucking joke to you?
Now, one other quote from Tolkien. I've represented at least the orcs as pre-existing real beings on whom the Dark Lord has exerted the fullness of his power in remodeling and corrupting them, not making them. Which, in Tolkien's world, is essentially saying orcs have souls, and despite all of the efforts of Morgoth to corrupt and destroy them, they still possess that glimmer of goodness in their hearts.
Cliched scenes imaginable into the plot, and they don't seem to care about the fact that they're completely undermining everything the author was intending to do. They're making this story entirely indistinguishable from every other show on television, because in the original story, good and evil are very, very clear.
No, they're not. No, they're not, actually. The entire story ends with Frodo sailing off into the west because he holds within him a poison and corruption that will ultimately like be his doom outside of the west. Like it is in fact a story about how there is complexity within good and evil, and that journeys through harsh conditions lead you into contact with many different aspects of what it means to be good or evil, and what the right thing may be at any given time.
Because unmistakable, the good guys and the bad guys. But in modern stories,
yeah, like I don't know. Does Matt Walsh see Gollum / Smeagol and like, is it like dividing by zero to him?
all of that is always blurred because the stories are being told by people who don't believe that evil exists. And in some cases, this approach has been very commercially successful. You know, we can't deny that Wicked, a story that's billed as a kind of prequel to The Wizard of Oz, is one of the biggest box office hits of the decade. And
it's not really a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. It's, you know, another story in the Land of Oz, unrelated to the original film for legal reasons, but like Wizard of Oz content is in public domain now, so like anyone can just make a movie based on The Wizard of Oz now.
Successful because it took the same edgy and subversive angle where the villain is actually a misunderstood hero. And for good measure, they've thrown in some transparent political messaging also. Watch.
Stop it. Are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? Well, I mean, I feel like if you asked Matt, is it worthwhile understanding like how bad people become bad, I think he would say yes, but I don't understand his aversion to this particular storytelling trope. Does Matt realize when the book Wicked was written? No. Of course not. Of course not. Like, Matt is over here being like, oh, look at this modern subversion they just came up with in 2024. This is a lot of clip to play.
Wickedness is thrust upon, some people were told.
Yeah, it's a take on that line, you know, some people are born great, or are people born great, or do they have greatness thrust upon them? It's an inversion of that. It's a little bit of cleverness.
And in particular, in this case, wickedness is thrust on a black woman by the white guy.
Well, okay. First of all, she's very clearly green.
Jeff Goldblum, and the Asian woman. The non-black characters use their institutional power to demonize an innocent person of color, as they so often do. Now, the message, once again, is that contrary to what you learned in The Wizard of Oz, wickedness isn't actually a legitimate concept. Nobody is wicked. No one's evil.
Well, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure I've seen Wicked, so I'm pretty sure that the people who are dedicating themselves to enslaving the animals in Wicked, I'm pretty sure they're painted to be pretty bad, actually.
Instead, it's just a way to scapegoat minorities.
You know, the slavers in the film are yeah, they're represented as being pretty bad and evil.
The south side of Chicago isn't more dangerous than Iraq because wicked people live there. It's more dangerous than Iraq because the government is scapegoating poor people. That's
What are you talking about, Matt? The south side of Chicago is not more dangerous than Iraq. Under the
the takeaway. And if you're 10 years old, which describes much of the audience for this film, you'll fall for it. I mean, you're not going to be very discerning when you're watching and consuming these messages. That's the point. And there are too many more examples of this phenomenon to mention. Some of them for adults also, from the new Joker movies, the show Lucifer, many, many examples. But we'll finish with how the 1959 film Sleeping Beauty has been defiled by Hollywood. This is a scene from the film Maleficent, which came out around a decade ago. And this is where
is he going to show like the wing scene?
The evil fairy appears and puts a curse on the newborn child.
Oh, okay. We're skipping that. Yep. Okay. Yep. She put a curse on them. Whoa. Curse on a baby. Whoa. So
as
evil.
You can tell, the fairy isn't messing around. She wants the kid dead, and she's upset because she wasn't invited to the party.
Well. Wait a minute. We know later on that she can turn into a dragon when she wants to kill someone. She didn't do it to kill the baby instantly. That's what she did it to get revenge on the parents. That's the entire purpose of the curse, is to make them feel bad.
That's it. She's an evil fairy. Nothing more to it. But in the live-action film, there's a lengthy backstory. The fairy has been betrayed in some horrible way by the king, and so the fairy shows up to place the curse on the child, but it's not the same curse. Watch.
Yeah, also, sometimes people do new things with stories, to give people a reason to come see the new story.
The CGI and the acting are horrible to the point that it's distracting. It's much harder to watch than the cartoon.
Not inviting one person specifically is an incredibly big deal back then. I'm pretty sure it would still be a big deal now. Like, it has that move in a social scenario can like destroy your relationship with someone depending on the circumstance.
Tune from the 1950s, but they also added a completely new part of the curse. Now the fairy offers an out to the child. She needs to find true love to lift the curse, and what do you know? In the end, the evil fairy, Maleficent, comes to love the child and save the child's life. Now, it's impossible to overstate how universal this trope has become, especially in children's entertainment. Like I said, it's all over the place. It's everywhere. The term psyop is overused, but it's hard to think of another way to describe this. It's a full-court press that's intended to convince children that objective morality does not exist, and that Christian ethics is a simplistic, outdated approach, in this very diverse and complicated and nuanced world we live in. Now, in response, you might be tempted to say, well, Hollywood is really just out of ideas, so they're going through all the classics.
Look, it's not a directed psyop. It's just capitalism, bro. These companies just want to make money. That's it. They're using known properties and repackaging them in a variety of different ways to try and get butts in seats off of name recognition alone. If you work in politics, you understand name recognition is one of the most important factors in getting people to turn out to vote. It is also one of the most important factors when it comes to getting people to turn up and buy movie tickets. Straight up.
And inverting the villains as a way of just generating some new content.
Yes.
There's some truth to that, but if that's all that's going on, then where are the right-wing retcons of old stories?
You made them. The Daily Wire made them. And people didn't like them. Because it turns out telling people to, be more racist is actually not like a super popular, cool thing to do in a film. I don't know. It's not like if you remade 12 Angry Men and like the angry racist guy was your hero and he slowly convinced everyone on the jury to hang a Puerto Rican kid, like that wouldn't, like, people would not like that. Actually, watching a racist twist the jury to hang a child is not actually like a really fun concept for a film, and people don't want to see that. Like, conservatives are free to make it. It's not going to do very well.
Why aren't we getting a follow-up to Beauty and the Beast where Gaston is vindicated as the hero that he actually was? All he did was work out.
See, I told you guys that this guy was going to slob Gaston's knob.
Eat eggs every day, defend the town.
Look at Matt Walsh doing his best LeFou.
And a vulnerable woman from a rampaging beast that came out of nowhere. And he did it all in style. Watch.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere in that big local castle that everyone knows about. He plays the entire song segment. It's crazy. Like, dude, stop eating so many eggs. You're gonna break the bank.
Now, I've made the case before that Gaston is really the hero of the story. In fact, I argued that a number of Disney villains were really
We cannot see. You gotta tell us. Look. I think you guys understand. I think you guys have seen these movies. I don't gotta tell you. It's just the Gaston song.
Heroes. It was a joke. I meant it as a joke at the time. But Disney is doing all this unironically. Now, admittedly,
See a dragonfly.
Even though you can make an argument for Gaston, even joke.
Yeah, suddenly evil is a very complicated and nuanced topic when Gaston is doing it. Exactly. Look, guys, look. Gaston may have had his reasons. I don't know. Let's wait. We all need to hear out his origin story.
Jokingly, it's not the easiest argument to make if you watch the original Beauty and the Beast. So it's ripe for a full-on right-wing follow-up that flips the script. Where's our big-budget Netflix animated film called Gaston with a consulting credit to that guy Raw Egg Nationalist, where Gaston bravely defends his village from a marauding foreign beast?
Yeah, because everyone wants to see the film Raw Egg Nationalist on Twitter would make. Why? Yeah, I can't understand why these multi-billion-dollar companies aren't knocking on Raw Egg Nationalist's door to make a live-action Gaston film.
As Netflix said, every villain deserves a happy ending or whatever, so where's his happy ending? When's that coming out? Well, we all know the answer to that question. Gaston's not getting a redemption arc because he's not an insufferable shrew or a jealous stepsister or a demented terrorist who paints his face or, a literal witch or, an old hag who's jealous that she didn't get invited to a party to the point that she'll murder her child. In short, he's not getting a redemption arc because in that modern remake.
Well, also, how to redeem like a guy who's just kind of shitty versus how to redeem like an evil witch. Which do you think would have a more interesting story? Like, if you had the option to learn how, for example, an old lady who wanted to skin 101 Dalmatians, how, like, her origin story, how did she become a person versus how did the local himbo become the local himbo? Like, I think the skinning story is going to be more interesting. The witch story is going to be more interesting. Like, yeah, the story about the guy who went crazy and just paints his face all the time, that's going to be more interesting. I don't know. Gaston is just your local, like, toxically masculine himbo. And you know what? Not all himbos have to be that way. Evidence, Kronk from Emperor's New Groove.
That humanizes him, he'd be a normal white guy who takes pride in himself and his community. And those are the values that Hollywood abhors, and those are the values that Hollywood doesn't want your children to learn.
I'm sorry, you watched the Gaston song and you said, ah yes, there's a normal white guy. You watched the Gaston song where he's like swallowing eggs whole and you thought that's a normal white guy? Okay, bro.
This is a relatively new phenomenon. It's important to distinguish it from the general trend towards anti-heroes, although this is all sort of part of the same overall trend. I'm aware that the whole anti-hero thing became really popular back with Breaking Bad, Sopranos, etc. Still going strong. But there are some key differences here. For one thing, those shows aren't aimed at children. That's important. For another, they're actually good shows artistically. They're not unimaginative and boring, complete with generic and unwatchable.
Aren't himbos supposed to be likable? Hence why I added more modifiers.
CGI. They also have stakes and tension, which these remakes lose entirely by making the villains seem sympathetic at heart. But most importantly, those shows are original. They're not transparent attempts to rewrite our culture and reprogram the morality of an entire generation. It's now very evident.
I love that in his mind, Disney is like hacking into the brains of children to make them woke for some reason.
That above all else, that is Hollywood's goal. They want your children to believe they live in a world without villains, where no individual can truly be described as evil, unless he's a straight white man. Those are the only villains. Those can stay, but all the rest cannot be villains if they're part of a, quote, marginalized group. So ask yourself this question. What kind of person or institution benefits when an entire generation is raised to believe that morality is entirely subjective. And what does it mean when those people or institutions have billions of dollars?
I love, by the way, that in his quest to try and show morality is objective by pointing out, like, look at all these movies that show morality is subjective, and like we all of us here are like, well no, that's not the point that the movie is making, but it is pretty interesting, I guess, that all these movies have different takes on morality, I guess. Like I think that's interesting. Having more than one take on morality can lead to a lot of different stories. But I don't think that the people who are writing and directing Disney movies are sitting down and saying, how can we break the heteronormative, you know, nature of society? What if we just embraced evil and turned children evil? Hey, fellow Disney writers, do you remember that movie, the Omen, the one with Damien? You all remember Damien, the evil child? What if we just made an entire society of Damiens? Haha. Like, what if we did that? Like, that's what Matt Walsh thinks happens. And that's just really stupid.
And control of the entertainment industry. Every day we hear another story about some violent, vagrant criminal released from jail or never jailed at all by some judge, almost always a female, who wants
Almost always a woman judge. Yeah, why can't we get any movies about how stupid and dumb women are? Says a man who is supposedly heterosexual.
to, see the good in this evil scumbag and give him a second or third or fourth or 10th or 30th chance.
That's just not how that works under our legal system.
Now, I'm not saying that those judges were influenced by a bad 101 Dalmatians remake.
I mean, that's kind of the thrust of this entire segment, right?
I'm saying they're part of the same cultural trend. They are reflecting it and driving it at the same time.
So if they're driving the cultural trend, then you are in fact saying what you were saying. Okay.
And this means that as a parent, you're up against some very powerful and very sinister forces. It also means that before they're taken offline, you should pull up some of those old films from the 1950s and 60s that I mentioned. Screen them for your kids. It's an entire era that everyone in the entertainment industry would rather you forget about. But
wow. Revolutionary advice from Matt Walsh. Play your children Disney films. I'm sure parents have never thought of that one before.
Good and evil do exist. And it's never been more important that your children understand that. Now let's get to our 5 headlines.
He spent half of his show whining about movies that have the trope of, like, a villain turns out to be more complicated. The top comment, never forget, it's not about telling their story, it's about destroying yours. It's like, dude, you can go. He literally played the clips from the older films. You can just go watch those. It clearly didn't destroy or eradicate the earlier story. Just go watch those. They exist still. Come on. Like a bunch of butthurt baby men. It's crazy. It's wild. Anyway, folks, if you got anything out of this or any enjoyment out of this, hit that like button and consider leaving a comment. The comments are really, really important. They help the show do better. And also, please consider subscribing. Support the show financially if you are at all able, because you guys are the ones who sponsor this stream and make it possible. And also, please join your local Dems, join your local DSA. You can join our Discord, !Discord in any of the chats or in the video description down below. And we can help you do that. Reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. Reach out to GamerG for help joining your local DSA. And also, check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes. Check it out today. Link down in the description. And let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack. Riverboat